Everyone. I'm Obscure Girl. I like movies. I like weird movies. I like weird, trippy, obscure movies that I feel like no one has seen or is talking about. Whether it's just because they're really old, or because the marketing was terrible, or because you're like, I think that was a fever dream I had when I was 5. I'm here to tell you it wasn't. Let's talk about it. So today's movie definitely falls into, I think, two of those categories, which were, I think that was a fever dream I had when I was 5, and it's kind of old at this point. Sorry. Like, a lot of the actors that were in are still alive today, but they're all grandparents now. So, yeah. And that movie is The Last Unicorn.
The Last Unicorn.
Slight backstory. When I was a kid in my hometown, we had just this tiny little video rental store. It wasn't even a chain, it was just like an independent rental store. And I would go back every week and rent either The Last Unicorn or this one other movie that definitely falls in the fever dream category, Happily Ever After, which was a sequel to Snow White. So, either way, I would go back and forth and I would rent these on a loop, basically. And then one day that place just went out of business, and then I owned a VHS copy of The Last Unicorn because I didn't return it before they closed. So there's that. I watched this movie into oblivion. I almost wrecked the tape, probably. I still have it, but the tracking is, you can tell I've watched it a billion times. So, this movie is based on a book of the same name. And I will say the book, which I do have, is one of the more meta fairy tale content thing out there, I'd say, besides like The Princess Bride. It is very, very meta, and it's very clear on what the rules are for fairy tales. There are things that are real, capital R, which are the things that are immortal, that last forever. Unicorns, harpies, like legends, certain legends are real, whereas the people that live through all of this stuff are not real. They are mortal. They will die someday. They are finite and therefore not real, at least according to this. And if you are a fair maiden, you immediately fall into the princess trope, to which you will have men suitors like princes that are coming to try and woo you, and the only way to woo you is with great deeds, defeating dragons, and things like that. There are rules, and that's just how it's done. And if you fall into any of those categories, this is just the way your life is going to be steered. Sometimes not even according to your own will, pretty much. You're just cog in the machine. The machine is what's real, you are not. Which didn't come through really well in the movie, but knowing that now and watching the movie, going back into it, I'm like, I can see where they were trying to reference it here and there, but definitely it wasn't like a, hey, so here are the rules. It was a, hey, this is a cartoon, you already know the rules kind of situation. So it took out a bit of the meta, but still kind of there, just not nearly as clear cut as the book. That's for sure. Now, in terms of obscurity, I recognize this is to a certain group of people, this is not that obscure of a movie. It was something a lot of us grew up with. However, to a modern day audience, I don't think a lot of kids have seen this. I don't think, even a lot of like Gen Z has seen this, so it's something that I definitely want to bring back to the forefront of people's attention by talking about it, because that's what this channel is. And for as obscure as this movie now is, the cast was stacked. Mia Farrow playing the voice of the unicorn herself slash Lady Amalthea. Alan Arkin playing Smendrick. The King Haggard, the evil king, is Christopher Lee. And one of my favorite bits of trivia about this movie is that Christopher Lee said multiple times this was his favorite movie that he ever made. And he actually showed up to filming and everything with his own like annotated copy of the book, and he was very much just like, no, this doesn't come out. And in fact, most of his lines specifically are straight from the book because he did not want to have anything changed. He loved this role so much. And I love that. Like, we're talking about, Saruman here. We're talking about Dracula from Hammer Horror, and this cartoon from the 1980s is where he plays this evil king that's obsessed with unicorns and has depression, is his absolute like end all favorite role, and that sparks so much joy for me. Don't know why, it just does. Like I don't know, props to the little guy or something, whatever. Um, who else? Angela Lansbury, plays Mummy Fortuna, who I have said in my most traumatizing moments from kids' movies, she is my trauma from this movie. Mummy Fortuna, we'll get into a little bit more. She was my monster under the bed as a kid. She's who I thought was waiting for me to, show that I wasn't sleeping when I should have been so she could eat me. And that is, there's some scary parts in this. I can't talk today. Oh my goodness. Tea. She was traumatizing. There are some scary parts in this movie for sure. Also, all of the songs are done by America. So, popular band at the time. They had the whole soundtrack to themselves pretty much, which was kind of cool. As a kid, I would have sworn to you it was Earth, Wind, and Fire, and grew up and was just like watching the beginning credits. I'm like, why did I think that? It's literally right there. Anyway. And even like the little one couple of liner characters are by slightly famous people. Rene Auberjonois from Star Trek, Boston Legal. He plays the drunk skeleton at the like end of the movie, which is one of the other scary parts, I would say, for sure. And I'm just like, okay, he's in this for like a couple of minutes. Robert Klein plays the butterfly, which again, it's like a small part of the beginning of the movie, and then he's gone. But so stacked cast, stacked soundtrack, um, and it was a Rankin Bass cartoon, so they did like all of the Christmas claymations we grew up with. No matter what generation you are, we are all forced to watch the same Rankin Bass claymation. Santa Claus is coming to town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as kids. It was those guys. They also did the original like animated The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings and stuff. They could be some scary cartoonists. I'm just saying. Like the cartoon version of Smeagol from The Hobbit scares me 1,000 times more than the Andy Serkis, motion capture character ever did, for sure. But I'm getting off topic. I apologize. Let's get into the movie itself. So now we will be getting into the full spoiler review. Full spoilers. If you would prefer to see the movie for yourself before I give you the note by note, you've had since 1982. But I'll let you pause right here. Go ahead. I'll wait. You back? Okay, cool. Hi. And if you're like me and you love full spoiler reviews because you just like knowing what you're getting into and whether or not it's going to be a waste of a couple hours, good for you. You're like me. Getting into it. So we start off with Mia Farrow voicing this unicorn. And there are these two hunters that are going through her forest that she protects. And they cannot find any game there whatsoever. And that's because the unicorn is obviously protecting them with, magic. Ooh. And one of the older hunters says to the younger one, there's definitely a unicorn here. And the younger guy's like, I thought those were only in fairy tales. And he's like, nope, there's at least one left. And the older hunter says to the forest, like, stay where you are, stay where you're protected, keep your trees green, keep it spring, but you're the last one. And the unicorn hears this and becomes kind of obsessed with the thought that she could be the last one.
But I must know if I am the only unicorn left in the world.
And she's like, just because I've never seen any of them doesn't mean they're not there. And she's just obsessing and obsessing. And then this butterfly shows up, who is not very helpful.
You've seen the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man.
Fairly obnoxious, voiced by Robert Klein. And the best way I can describe this butterfly would be kind of like a less charming version of Batty from Fern Gully. But by that, I mean he's like a radio that keeps switching stations. And they explain that butterflies are basically just good for repeating what they've heard in their travels. Hence why he is like music ADD personified. Butterflyified. But she's like, okay, you've been outside of this forest. Have you ever seen any others like me? Have you ever seen any other unicorns?
What I want to know is if you've seen other unicorns like me somewhere in the world.
And at first, he's super not helpful at all, of course. He's just singing. But then he goes, no, don't listen to me. Listen. And you hear kind of like this, the wind telling a story almost like a prophecy. And you just hear, they traveled down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull was close behind them and covered their footprints.
You can find the others if you are brave. They passed down all the roads long ago, and the Red Bull ran close behind them and covered their footprints.
And she's like, okay, that's new. And she hears about the Red Bull and King Haggard, who keeps the Red Bull. And that's the last anyone's seen any of the unicorns. So at this point, the unicorn's like, okay, I need to go find them. They might be waiting for me. How long have they been waiting for me to, go find them and save them? So she starts going on this journey. And as soon as she leaves her forest, the first human she comes across, she quickly discovers that most people cannot see the realness of her. They cannot see that she's a unicorn. They see her as a white mare. So a white horse, basically. And of course, the unicorn's pretty uppity because she's a unicorn. She has the right to be. But she's like, I, a horse? Is that all I am to you? And is just totally horrified. And she even like attacks him kind of with her horn a little bit. And he's just like, oh, my foot must have slipped. And she runs off and falls asleep on the side of the road like a rookie because she's never been out of her forest. She is sheltered. And this is when we meet Mommy Fortuna, who is horrifying. She's horrifying. Like I said, she's my monster under the bed. She's voiced by Angela Lansbury in a twisted version of Angela Lansbury's majestic voice that, can comfort you in the middle of the night and goes to this. But she is a witch. She is a real witch for the most part. She's also very arrogant. And she has her son, helper, whatever he is. And then she has Schmendrick the magician.
Schmendrick the magician! The last of the red hot swamis. And I too am real. Like you. Like her.
Who voiced by Alan Arca, who is going to be a big character in this. And actually in the book, there's a whole backstory that we never get to in the movie about him, where basically he's cursed. He does say in the movie he's a lot older than he looks. But what he means by that is some big magician back in the day saw the potential in him and saw that he was just not achieving it. Not in the slightest. He had true, real, capital R magic inside of him, but he wasn't mastering it, and he wasn't going to in this lifetime. So he cursed him to immortality until he was able to master his real magic. So they don't address that in the movie at all, but Schmendrick's immortal until he gets his crap together. So he ends up working as kind of a cheap trickster magician for Mommy Fortuna and her traveling carnival. Now this carnival is fake, basically. They have all of these different creatures that Mommy Fortuna has transformed magically and put a glamour on them to make them look like other things. Like there is a toothless lion that she makes a manticore. There's a snake that she makes the Midgard serpent. But there is a harpy, and the harpy is real. Capital R, real. And Mommy is very, very arrogant of the fact that I captured her. Yeah, she'll kill me one day, but she'll remember I'm the one who caught her. I did that. And she will always belong to me because of that. And so arrogant, she knows she's going to die from this harpy someday, but she's all just like, my immortality is right there. And so she puts a fake horn on the unicorn so people will see the unicorn, which is so sad when you really think about it. Like, you could be looking at a real unicorn and not know it. And so she has to put a fake horn just because people cannot handle the true beauty that she is. That's really sad. So then Schmendrick comes to her at night when she's in this cage and everything, which is like magicked by Mommy Fortuna for her to not be able to get out. And he's trying a couple of tricks, basically trying his hand to see if he can magically get her out. And they're just getting worse and worse. The first time he gets burned. The second time the cage starts shrinking until it's almost about to crush her. And he's like, all right. You deserve a first-rate magician. And unfortunately, you're just going to have to settle for a second-rate pickpocket. And he pulls out the keys because he stole them from the helper, Rook. And he's like, yeah, I gave him a riddle, and those always keep him going all night, so he won't be bothering us. So he lets her out, and she starts realizing, like, no, I can't be the only free one. I'm going to let everyone out. And so she starts letting out all the other creatures. And at this point, Rook comes out, and he's like, okay, why is a raven like a writing desk? Which I'm like, I know that. I know that riddle. Which, just quick trivia on the side anyway. That was a riddle that was actually written by Lewis Carroll, who wrote Alice in Wonderland, that was not supposed to have a answer, but some people have theorized that the answer is Edgar Allan Poe wrote on both. And I like that, so I'm going to use that. Anyway, but then, so him and Schmendrick start, kind of grappling or whatever. Schmendrick gets the upper hand on him a little bit, but she's going to let out the harpy. And the harpy's voice is horrifying. It's so scary. It's so scary. I thought I had written down who voices the harpy, but I don't. Anyway, but like just this creepy low voice, and it's like, set me free. We are sisters, you and I. And it's like,
Set me free. We are sisters, you and I
wouldn't do that. But she's like, no, she can't be caged. She's real like me. It's not okay. And Mommy Fortuna comes out just as she lets the harpy out, and the harpy just explodes out of this cage and is about to go straight for the unicorn because her nature is to be evil. And Unicorn deflects her off, but then she sees Mommy Fortuna, and Mommy's just like, all right, come at me. Just remember, I held you. And then you see the harpy just tearing Mommy Fortuna to shreds like a vulture with a carcass. It's messed up. You don't see a lot. You just kind of see like the harpy's back and Mommy on the ground. And it looks like a cartoon of like a giant vulture going at, a cow carcass, but it's like, oof. And Schmendrick wants to run, and she's like, no, don't run and don't scream. You can never run from anything immortal. Their nature is to, chase you. I'm like, oh, okay, immortal things are like dogs. Good to know. Good to know. Why not? So then they go on, and they get into the forest, and they meet Captain Cully and his band of merry men, which are basically Robin Hood knockoffs. They're a bunch of outlaws that are living the Robin Hood life, but are just like, idolizing Robin Hood. But Captain Cully's like, Robin Hood is a myth. We're what's real. And, again, in the book, they're like, Robin Hood is real, capital R, because he's a legend, whereas these guys obviously are not real because they're mortals. And not just that, they're practically glorified cosplayers. So, yeah. And one of them is Molly. And Molly is Captain Cully's woman. She's his maid Marian, basically. She's an older lady. She's very snarky. She's very sassy. She has lived a life, and it hasn't been the nicest to her, and she wears that on her sleeve. Very much so. But the unicorn is hiding at this point, and it's just Schmendrick with all of them. And they're like, all right, show us you're a real magician. And so he goes, magic do as you will. Magic do as you will. And all of a sudden, the spirits, like an illusion of Robin Hood, Marian, and the merry men, are traipsing through the forest. So everyone goes to chase them. And Schmendrick and the unicorn are now free to move about the castle, basically. Which, it's not a castle, it's the woods. I'm using a figure of speech. But, they're on their way out and everything like that. But Captain Cully comes back, and he's all like, nope, I see what you did. You made all my men run away. We're gonna tie you to this tree, and you can just stay there. And they tie him to this interesting looking tree, and he tries to use magic to get out, but he doesn't do the magic as he will. He does like something that he thinks he knows. And the tree turns into a woman who is obsessed with him, and he's just like, the knots of the tree are a bit on the voluptuous side, and his head is just stuck right in there. legs wrapped around her and everything. And as a kid, I'm just like, should I be watching this? That was the part where I was just like, okay. And then I grew up and realized that tree was in The Evil Dead. But I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, the unicorn ends up saving him from his new marriage, basically, to the tree. But they can't get away before being stopped by Molly. And this is probably the most heartbreaking scene, but the best scene of this movie. And it is where Molly confronts the unicorn. Now, Molly is one of the few people in this universe that understands the rules, like I said in the book. Um, she understands young maidens are the princesses that unicorns come to. People like her don't get their own happy endings, they don't get their own fairy tales anymore. And so when Molly is confronting the unicorn and she's saying, how dare you? Where were you 20 years ago, 10 years ago? Where were you when I was new? When I was one of those beautiful maidens you would always come to? How dare you come to me now when I am this? And yeah, that might have been an exact quote because I've watched it a billion times and it's so good. But I get it. If, I were an older lady and I saw a unicorn that I'd been waiting my whole life to see to get my happily ever after, and then I ended up living in the woods with a bunch of Robin Hood cosplayers, yeah, I would be pretty upset too. And Schmrender's like, how dare you talk to her like that? And the unicorn's like, no, like, I get it. She's like, I'm here now. And Molly's just like, I forgive you. And she's one of the only people that touches the unicorn. It's something really like no one else, not even Mommy Fortuna, no one touches his unicorn. Molly is the one who partly has the audacity, but also that the unicorn gives permission. Basically, like, no, I'm sorry, I'm here with you now. You want to come on this adventure with us? And she doesn't mean say that because she just, Molly's just going. Molly's like, yeah, no, I'm obviously coming with you. Also, you're going the wrong direction. So with Molly in tow, they now head towards the castle of King Haggard. And they get to Haggard's kingdom, and night falls, and in comes the bull. And the Red Bull's a pretty good illustration. Very, definitely very intimidating. Mostly I just want an energy drink whenever I see this part, but that's besides the point. But the bull recognizes the unicorn and wants to do what he did to all the rest of them and drive her somewhere. And then Schmendrick is like, okay, magic do as you will, magic do as you will. And the magic decides that the bull is after a unicorn, let's remove a unicorn from this equation, and turns the unicorn into a beautiful albino young woman that they name the Lady Amalthea. And the bull is gone now because he was looking for a unicorn. There's no unicorn there, and is not processing that this woman was the unicorn. However, now this is where this entire body dysmorphia nightmare hellscape kind of comes in. Because now this unicorn that was real, that was immortal, is in a mortal human body that she feels dying and decaying all around her. She is beyond horrified. And not just that, she also realizes she's become a beautiful young woman. And the role that she is meant to fit now is going to be imposed on her until the unicorn in her soul is gone. And this role in a fairy tale character is going to take her place. Again, this is mostly from the book context. They do try to explain it in the movie. And if you're really deep, I guess you can get it. If you watch it 50 times before you're 10, maybe. But she is horrified at the fact that she is no longer immortal, that she is no longer the proud creature that she was. She is now a cog in the fairy tale machine that she has always kind of looked down on because she was real, and now she's not. And she's just horrified, basically. And even Molly is horrified on her behalf. Like, because again, she knows the rules. She's like, she's going to turn into not her. She's going to disappear into this role, into this fairy tale princess. And sure enough, they make their way up to the castle and they meet King Haggard, played by Christopher Lee, and Prince Lear, played by a very young Jeff Bridges, which I thought that was pretty cool. And I grew up and, recognized that and knew who Jeff Bridges was. The Big Lebowski is Prince Lear. Okay, all right, cool. But immediately, Prince Lear is fitting that role in the fairy tale onto Lady Amalthea, which she is stunning. She's a gorgeous, gorgeous cartoon character. I'm not going to lie to you. But also, you've got King Haggard, who is immediately suspicious. So from this point forward, things start getting a lot more fairy tale-ified. That's for sure. Because Amalthea, unicorn. But the Lady Amalthea, who is passing herself off as Schmendrick the Magician's niece, is being pursued by this prince who's then slaying dragons for her and all this other stuff. And she's kind of horrified at him slaying a dragon because, she still remembers being a unicorn at this point, and she's like, that was real. Like that was real like me, and you killed it. So that was not the kind of thing that she'd be into. And at one point, Lear even goes to Molly and is like, what do I do to impress her? Like, nothing I'm doing works. I'm doing all of the things that a prince is supposed to do. I'm slaying dragons and I'm doing great deeds. And Molly goes, maybe she's not the kind of girl to be wooed by great deeds. And Lear seems to be like kind of in on the rules of the world as well. So he's just like, what are you talking about? Meanwhile, King Haggard is like staring down at Amalthea pretty much. He's very, very wary of her. And at first, when he looks at her, he goes, why can I not see myself in your eyes? Because he looks in her eyes and he sees the forest. But as we go on, and she spends more time there and starts having the fairy tale princess life kind of take over her, and she's remembering less and less that she's a unicorn, then when the king actually looks into her eyes and he can actually see himself at a certain point, he's like even more mad at this point. And that is when the king like announces to her what he did to the unicorns. He said he was depressed. He said, he thought at first when Lear turned up at his door, because that's not his biological son, he was left at the king's doorstep and he raised him as a prince. He's like, I thought he would make me happy, and he did for a time, but even that got old. And nothing made me happy until I saw the unicorns. I had to have them for myself. So he had the bull drive all the unicorns into the sea. So he can still see them, like in the rolling tides in the sea foam. It's actually unicorns in there. And they are just trapped alive in the sea because they're scared to come out and face the bull again. So that's where the unicorns are, except at this point, Amalthea is almost too far gone to even recognize that's what she's been looking for. And then we have this amazing, 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 wonderful song. It's so great. So at this point, Amalthea has sang the song, like, now that I'm a woman, everything has changed. And then Lear sings this song to her called That's All I Have to Say. And I love that song so much. And actually, fast forward years later, I'm watching an episode of The Orville, the Seth MacFarlane version of Star Trek. And this girl is at a bar and she starts singing, and all of a sudden I start singing along with her, and I didn't recognize how I knew the song, which happens to me way too often sometimes. But then I realized, I'm like, oh my god, she's singing The Last Unicorn. And that's a really, really pretty version. If you ever look up All I Have to Tell You, That's All I Have to Say, The Orville, so good. I listen to it all the time. But yeah, so they have this great duet, and at this point she's been fairy taleized. Like, she is the princess, he is the prince, and she is in love with him, and all she wants is to be with him at this point. Meanwhile, Schmendrick, who has replaced the king's former magician, which was voiced by Paul Frees, by the way. And Paul Frees, I always have to shout out, is the voice of the ghost host at the Haunted Mansion. So always have to shout out my boy there, Grim Grinning Ghosts. And But he replaces this magician or whatever, and now he is the king's fool and magician. And Molly is taking place as kind of like the cook. And at one point, the cat goes to her. The cat, also voiced by Paul Frees, by the way, which I almost thought at first, like, did the magician turn into a cat so he can still spy on the king? Because they even have, like, some similar looks almost, but I don't think that's how it was. At least in the book, it wasn't that way, so the cat can just talk. Sure. Um, and the cat tells Molly how to get into the lair of the Red Bull. So it is when uh, the skull speaks, when the wine drinks itself, when the clock strikes the right time. That is when they can enter the lair of the Red Bull. So Molly, Schmendrick, and Amalthea end up going into the dungeons of this castle where they find a laughing, talking skeleton. That's the skeleton that's voiced by Rene Auberjonois from Star Trek and Boston Legal, which is how I know him from. And he is definitely something I also mentioned in my top 10 most traumatic moments in kids' movies because he's creepy. It's a skeleton with like a spiked crown that's just hanging over this cupboard. And he's just laughing, and he's laughing at the idea that, Schmendrick is actually a magician. And then they're all just like, oh, yeah, well, we've got, did you at least bring the wine? Because the skull is speaking. So did you bring the wine? And Molly's like, I found water, but you're a magician. You could turn water into wine. And again, this sets the skeleton reeling. Like, this one turned water into wine. Okay. And he tries to, and he's like, okay, like it's wine, but it's really bad. And then that gets the skeleton's attention big time because he's like, it's wine. I'll take it. I'll take it. And Schmendrick's even like, what are you going to do? You can't taste wine. You don't even have a stomach. And he's like, but I remember wine. So then Schmendrick ends up giving the wine to the skeleton, and we're figuring at this point the wine is drinking itself because it's disappearing and it's not going through the skeleton. So that's two things right there. And then they're like, okay, what about the clock striking the right time? Because there's this giant creepy clock with like gargoyles on it and like a really big opening that could totally be a door. And the skeleton's all annoyed. He's just like, whatever time you end up going through is the right time. So they end up running through, and they're like, okay, well, let's just go. And at this point, the skeleton recognizes Amalthea as a unicorn, and he's like, no, not that one. And his eyes turn like red. And he's like, Hagrid, unicorn! And it's like really, really creepy because the voice he uses is really, really creepy. But they end up making it through the mirror into this like cloudy, like fantasy realm kind of a thing. And Lear ends up following them through it because, he's kind of low key, charmingly stalking Amalthea, I guess. Sure. But then Hagrid shows up and he's all like, oh, no, 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 no. And so he ends up destroying the clock. And so what was once this cloudy fantasy world turns into this creepy, dank cave. And all of a sudden, like, the bull knows she's here. And the bull knows what she is. So at this point, Schmendrick, like, she's like, I don't want to be a woman or a unicorn. I'm a woman, which is the opposite of the argument she had earlier. She's like, I'm a unicorn. She's like, I just want to be with Lear. I love you. And Schmendrick's like, sorry, that's not what you are, and ends up turning her back into the unicorn. And round two with Unicorn versus Red Bull. And this time she actually starts fighting back and starts trying to drive him into the sea. And I think it's because of her strength in having had emotions that she's never had before. Like, unicorns didn't have emotions, they're infinite, they're eternal. Emotions are a human thing, and now she's had those human emotions, and that gives her the strength and the courage to fight back, which the Red Bull ends up going into the sea, and that makes all the unicorns be unleashed because they don't want to be in the sea with the Red Bull, so they finally get to be free again. And you just see hundreds and hundreds of unicorns emerging from the sea, and it's really beautiful scene. But at some point during all this altercation, Lear ended up getting hit by the Red Bull and like ended up dying. And he actually died. And Amalthea's just like, yeah, I remember you. And she heals him because now she's back in full unicorn form, but she's now an eternal unicorn that understands human emotions. And that's something that's going to change her forever. It's kind of like, when a vampire gets a soul, except significantly more posh and regal. But so now it's just like this ending, the king ended up, the tower literally fell. Like when the bull ended up going into the sea and all the unicorns stampeded out, the king's castle and tower came crumbling down with the king in it. And it ends with him going, I knew you were the last. And he's just like so satisfied in himself, like that he called it, I guess. But no king. Lear, I guess, is now king. And him and Amalthea have to live apart because, yeah, I'm not even going to say the word, but you know what I'm thinking. And I guess in the book it's even sadder because he like never actually finds happiness. He just loves her forever until he wastes away. And it's like, oh, okay. Though part of me would be sad if he ended up falling for someone else too, because she's not gonna. But anyway. Um, and that's how they end the movie. Like Molly and Schmendrick go off because Schmendrick has now proved that he's a great magician, and in the book he's now, able to live a life grold with Molly and end his days properly, that he's mastered his magic pretty much. And but again, that is so not addressed in the movie. The movie's just like, oh, him and Molly are gonna go hang now. And Amalthea goes back to her woods with this whole new life view and all these new emotions, and she lives out the rest of time protecting her forest. And we cut out with this, big swelling America song. So that's the last unicorn. So, as I'm saying all this, like it's a borderline sad ending, but it's also like, yeah, you know, unicorn lives, yay! All the unicorns are free, yay! So it's like a bittersweet ending for sure. Final thoughts. So my final thoughts on this movie is just, first of all, I love it. I've always loved it. It's nostalgia 100%. It does have some pacing problems for sure, like a lot of those Rankin Bass cartoons did. I am not one for like 70s movie pacing, and even though this was an 80s movie, it definitely had some of those 70s like slow pacing at certain points that they would fill in with an America song. But other than that, like I think it has a lot of, like, even as an adult, the meta fairy tale content that does slip through even in the movie, not even just from knowing the book, is really cool. Molly's character is amazing. And, it's something you can look back on like, that was a good movie, and I see why Christopher Lee loved it so much. So that was The Last Unicorn. I hope you enjoyed this review. I hope, like, if you have seen the movie, please let me know in the comments what you thought about it. If you end up watching the movie because of this, let me know what you think about it in the comments. Was this a good review for it, or was this more of a, like, oh, you didn't even get it at all? Just let me know nicely, please, nicely. Please like this video. It helps so much. Please subscribe to the channel. Please subscribe to the channel. That would be so helpful. I'm really trying to get this place going still. I have a Patreon. Pretty please feel free. The Patreon link is in the description below. Please feel free to check that out. That'd be great. Patreon users and donators end up getting their own shout out on the show, and they get bonus content and things like that. And they can also just help take pride in watching this, channel grow as well. Hopefully I can get better sound equipment and lighting equipment at some point. And yeah, I've been Obscure Girl. The rest is confetti.